Hello YouTube, back with another video, first video of 2025. So first of all, Happy New Year. Hopefully things have gone well towards the end of the year and into the beginning of 2025. But with that said, this video I wanted to talk a little bit about the end of the year and then also the beginning of this year in terms of wrestling cards and talk about a couple different things that were kind of on my mind. This is a video that I wanted to make towards the end of the year. I wanted to do like a year-end video, but I'm going to mix it into a beginning of the year video since there's a couple of things coming down the pipeline. And we're starting to get some updates, so some things are definitely happening. Now, what led originally to the whole idea of doing this video was actually what I'm kind of showing you on the screen right now. Right now, it's a still image, a still shot of a video that I'm going to play a clip of this for you in this video. I'm going to use a little editing magic and I'll hit play on this for you and play you a specific snippet. But this is actually coming from a wrestling trading cards Patreon group. Now, unlike normal Patreon, like I understand that you may be familiar with Patreon, it's basically a thing where people can kind of put different kind of content behind a paywall traditionally, but you can also, and this is something I learned with this specific Patreon group, apparently you can also create a quote-unquote free tier. And that just means that you're basically collecting emails to be able to send potentially people newsletters or be able to connect to it, different podcast episodes and things like that. And that's basically what happened here. This particular trading group, you can go into the free tier, which is exactly what I did. There have been weekly newsletters and articles and different things. It is very much 100% focused on WWE, the WWE license, and a lot of it is written by the individual at the top right corner there, Adam Gelman, who does pretty much all the articles and the podcast and everything. And this video is one of the videos that wound up on that particular Patreon. Now, what I'll do is I'll leave a link in the description to the Patreon itself if you're interested. Again, there is a free tier, so you don't have to pay for it. So I joined the free tier and I was given access to those newsletters and things, including this. And one of the things that was brought up in this conversation is actually what piqued my interest and led me down making this video. And the specific point that I want to focus in on is this video was kind of an end of year review, and they had a specific question that was posed, which is, what grade do you want to give wrestling trading cards in 2024? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to fixate on what the bottom right corner says. And the reason for that is because the top two guys don't collect AEW cards at all. Like I said, Adam Gelman is kind of a WWE fan in addition to being kind of a super collector Becky Lynch, and is very much a cheerleader for a lot of the stuff that WWE does, especially in trading cards. First with Panini, talking up a lot of the stuff that Panini does, and I'll talk about Panini here as well in this video, but also kind of hyping up a lot of what Topps is going to do. He's ready at all times with his pom-poms, so no matter what happens, pretty much no matter who the licensee is, no matter what the situation is, everything is optimistic to increase values on wrestling cards. It's kind of hilarious, but if you know that going in, it doesn't bother you, and it does have a lot of interesting kind of at least conversation points, even if you don't agree with it, in terms of different developments and everything. To put it bluntly, if WWE Trading Cards has any kind of a bowel movement, he'll probably have 3 articles and a podcast episode about it. So if you are interested in keeping up on what's going on with it, it's a pretty good place to get at least some discussion points. Again, you can do additional research and everything to kind of balance it out, but at the end of the day, it is useful for that information. But if I want anything with AEW, well, then you're not going to get anything from here because he doesn't collect the cards, so he obviously doesn't have too much to say on it. And neither one of the top two have anything to say on it, even though they kind of try to interject their own commentary in it in the course of this conversation. However, I can kind of discount the top two since they don't collect the cards at all for AEW, and it's WWE only. And then the bottom left, I can also kind of discount, even though he does have very strong feelings about the way that Upper Deck has treated the license. So to make a long story short, the top two guys gave, the AEW Upper Deck collaboration kind of an incomplete or an NA because they didn't want to give a grade for something they don't collect. And Ryan Shear on the bottom left gave it basically an F, just because he wasn't a big fan of what Upper Deck has done with it. And he's been very vocal about that in the past, which is fine. But I kind of have to discount it because he collects Brutus the Barber Beefcake and some other WWE legends. So automatically he's kind of not the demographic for the cards. So I kind of have to take it with a grain of salt. Doesn't mean you ignore it, but he can have valid critiques, but you got to take it with a grain of salt if you don't even patronize the product. The most telling, and I think most important part of the conversation for grading wrestling cards overall, though, comes with RBI Crew 7 on the bottom right, because he's actually an LCS owner. And more importantly, he's an LCS owner who sponsors this Patreon and sponsors the event that they've had at the National with wrestling cards at the forefront the last couple of years at the National. And that's important because that means he's somebody who, as an LCS, supports wrestling cards. And even in the course of this conversation, he says that he's kind of out on AEW as a brand, but at the same time, what he's saying as an LCS owner, I think holds more weight here, because whether he likes the product or he doesn't like the product, if the product is profitable, if the product is successful, he'll still sell it. An LCS owner doesn't need to like every sport to sell the sport if the product will sell. And he doesn't need to like every wrestling company to sell the product if it sells, if it does well for him, if the singles do well, especially since at the National, the last couple of years, they've had a heavy inventory of wrestling cards in their showcase. I guarantee you, if an MJF AEW Upper Deck card is going to sell for good money and they can get their hands on it, they will put it in the showcase. Money talks. At the end of the day, when I'm looking at somebody who's looking at the bottom line and who will promote the product and has already demonstrated that they'll promote wrestling cards, if they have any criticisms about what Upper Deck's doing with AEW, then I would listen. And I also want to talk a little bit about the new Topps now that they've taken over the WWE license from Panini. So I want to give a little bit more AEW coverage in this video to kind of balance it out since, like I said, it's a little underrepresented, but it's obviously a smaller part of the market, so I understand it. But I will also talk about WWE because I definitely have some thoughts, and it's one of those things where I am paying close attention to what WWE is doing with Topps/Fanatics because it is interesting and I think it's going to be relevant, especially since they've got a product that is just around the corner, and I think it's also going to play in that AEW discussion that I want to have. Now, what I'm going to do real quick is with editing magic, I'm going to play you the little snippet. I'm going to fixate specifically on what RBI Crew 7 at the bottom there says as pertaining to his letter grade and then also his comments on the AEW Upper Deck license. And when I come back, I want to tell you why I think that this is particularly significant for a couple of specific reasons. And then I'll shift over and talk about WWE and especially the new stuff that is going to be coming out from Topps and kind of the way things are sitting right now at the beginning of the year with the whole wrestling card calendar.
Bannister, you've probably ripped more than all of us combined. What's your thought process here?
Well, I'm going to give a fat F to Upper Deck because I'll tell you why. From a perspective of buying the product to resell, cannot name one AEW product I actually made money on. Every one I buy, I lose money on. So you get an F for that, and that's honest, true story. There's not been one release of Upper Deck AEW that we can actually make a profit on, and I have basically almost stopped ordering it because of that. And that's bad. I love wrestling. I love all types of wrestling. I'm not thinking AEW anymore, but there's plenty of reasons why I'm not anymore. And I think we all can contest to that. But
okay, now obviously very harsh words. Now at the beginning, I told you the reason why I'm focusing specifically on his commentary versus the other three guys on the screen there. The reason being that as an LCS owner, he has every financial incentive to support a product, whether he likes it or doesn't like it. You know, he could be the biggest AEW fanboy. He could be the biggest WWE fanboy. He could think AEW is the worst thing in recorded history. But if the product makes money, and he is an LCS owner, which he is, then he's still going to be interested in selling it. It doesn't matter. So when you're talking about the bottom line, the fact that you're willing to come out on whether you want to call this or not, this is a public forum because you're literally recorded video being this harsh about one of the brands and one of the products that you said that you buy to try to sell. And on top of it, you basically indicate that you consider not even ordering it as someone who specifically sponsors a wrestling card event at the National. That right there should set off alarm bells over in Carlsbad, California. It's a warning, and I don't know who needs to hear it, from Upper Deck, but I'm just going to state this as somebody who does patronize the product, who does buy the cards, who does collect the cards, stuff like that. The fact that an LCS owner is willing to say the quiet part out loud, because I guarantee you, and I assure you, he's not the only one who has thought this. And I guarantee you, I've had conversations with people who have a tremendous amount of dissatisfaction, and that includes collectors, that includes LCS owners, because there is a frustration when you're getting a product that, for various reasons that we can talk about in future videos, and I've talked about in the past already on this channel, are not providing the perception of value, the actual value. There's some serious problems. And when I get to the WWE section, just as I transition into it, I'm going to make a point about that part of what's going on with AEW as a brand, that's on Tony Khan's shoulders. That's something that Upper Deck can't do anything about. But what they can do about is take care of their own business as far as their cards, their releases, and that's something they can at least try to resolve on their end of it to try to at least mitigate some of it. Because if you can't fix your part of it, well, then it doesn't matter what AEW is doing. Even if it gets hot again, even if they start making all the right moves, the release schedule and your ability to get releases out the door is a major factor. Some of the missteps that are happening inside of these sets is a major factor. All of it plays into it. So that clip, to me, is extremely telling that he's willing to say the quiet part out loud. And that's the reason why I wanted to play that clip for you. Now, as promised, I'm going to shift it over. But before I do, I'm going to make one more point. Topps Chrome WWE is going to be released. The license has shifted over now officially from Panini. With the changeover of the calendar to 2025, it shifted over from Panini back over to Topps. And what Topps is going to do coming right out of the gate is they're going to have a Chromium product. Now, what I want to do here is I want to share an Instagram post because this is indicative of Topps through their various social medias promoting elements of it. And I'll also show you something else that plays into it as well. But right here, you can see right off the top on this Instagram post that I'm going to show you, it says the Rock's first WWE autograph cards in 27 years have arrived. Now, there were those autographs that were in a Leaf wrestling product. And I think if I included it as part of the clip, their RBI crew also praised Leaf. So again, telling. Technically, there's two companies that are producing wrestling cards. Leaf technically did last year. They produced the Leaf wrestling set, which is an unlicensed set. They got their own autographs from various sources and all that, including the Dwayne Johnson autographs, which were included as kind of rock autos. Well, these are the first official rock autos in 27 years coming from Fanatics/Topps. And that's significant, obviously, because not only do they have the license, but they also have an extremely strong relationship with WWE. So they are able to get stuff like this. So on the next slide here, you've got a render. As you can see there, of a Topps Chrome rock card. And you not only do you have rock, you've also got the Smell It inscription. So a lot of the cards that they've shown on these mock-ups are with inscriptions. So that, they're trying to add that additional value into it. And again, they're renders for the most part, nothing too crazy. But regardless, this is going to be a major selling point for this product. To have stuff like this is going to be huge for Topps. And coming on the heels of the Netflix, the first Netflix episode of Monday Night Raw, well, on top of it, you can see right here, Topps Now. Well, here you go. You've seen images already with the stuff from the very first Raw on Netflix, which became a whole thing in and of itself. I could literally have a whole video talking about it. I wasn't as big a fan of it as some folks were. It was really kind of a lazy effort on their part. But let it not be said that they did not promote the hell out of it, and let it not be said that they did not put a ton of effort into trying to make it as big and grandiose as possible. And to a lot of degrees, they succeeded in that. If WWE can do nothing else, is pomp and circumstance. They've mastered that, and they know how to make it a quote-unquote big event. Well, right here you've got Topps Now that captures some of those moments. So if somebody wants to collect them, these are some collectible cards. You've got a Roman Reigns Rock Dual Auto, Roman Reigns Rock Dual card, the John Cena one, one potentially with an autograph and a piece of his shirt. All this stuff that you can get. Well, right there, you've got something that you can definitely sell. There's a big selling point. And then in the same thing, in the same email, here you go, some more Topps Now stuff that you can do. Rhea Ripley, Roman Reigns specifically, CM Punk, you've got all that, and you can market it. And again, it's only 72 hours, which, time limited. And right in the same email, here you go, 2025 Topps Chrome, and additional renders and all this stuff that could potentially come out of it. I'm going to be very curious. Now, the reason why, as I said, I want to shift over into this now, is because one of the big mistakes that Upper Deck had in 2024, and the problem is this is a mistake because this has happened in 2023 and it's happened in a lot of these other ones, is that every single release has been delayed. As a result, you're taking a license where you only had 3 brands, 3 releases that were presumably going to come out this past year, and you missed. You released Flagship, which I talked about extensively on this channel, open boxes of it, talked to you about it at length, so I'm not going to go there again. And you had Upper Deck Black Diamond. I opened a box of that here as well. And I explained a lot of my criticisms and critiques with it with a video before that. And then I opened a box of it just to demonstrate it myself. And I can tell you right now, at least as far as I'm aware of ones that I've watched, I might have had the least luck on an Upper Deck Black Diamond box out of anybody I've seen. I might have had the worst overall box top to bottom, but that's not even a reason for me to be particularly harsh about it. The issue is that I saw some of the challenges even before that. Even if I had had an amazing box, my critiques on that would have been the same. And the secondary market is backing me up on this because go take a look if you have the chance. What some of the autograph versions are starting to sell for. A lot of those manufactured autographs, you can get them super cheap. Now, that is fantastic news if you're a collector of some of these individual characters, because you can get some great ones. Tony Storm, you can get Swerve, you can get Hangman, you can get, MJF, you can get Britt Baker, you can get whoever your favorites are. If they're in this checklist, there's a really good chance that if you get the manufactured patch, which doesn't add any value whatsoever, you can pretty much get a cheap version of that autograph because they're sticker autos on a manufactured patch. So it's a double whammy of kind of value diminishing returns on that. And you pretty much needed to sell them right out of the block if you wanted to get maximum value. Now, even with that said, there are nice cards in the set, and this is kind of the give and take with a lot of this stuff. We can acknowledge there are some nice looking cards in it, but Black Diamond, and the same thing happens here in hockey, because Black Diamond Hockey just came out as well. And guess what? The same challenges that Black Diamond Hockey has are the same challenges that Black Diamond Wrestling has. So making it AEW instead of hockey doesn't change anything. The only thing that changes is that hockey has a much deeper fan base to pull from. So as somebody who collects those cards as well for hockey players that I collect, I can tell you that even still, you can get some of that stuff much cheaper than an equivalent, maybe a different brand. But the bottom line was, and the biggest kind of, I'm going to call it a mistake, but at the end of the day, it was the biggest detriment to the 2024 year for the AEW brand, not talking about anything related to anything Tony Khan has control over, is the delays that led to Allure, which for me is still the best one of the releases that they've ever pulled off, being delayed into this year. It got delayed into January. So in theory, at the time that I'm recording this, hopefully within the next couple of weeks, we'll get a checklist and hopefully a release date before the end of the month. We're going to see. But kind of the reason this plays into WWE now, I'm going to shift it over, is that Topps Chrome is supposed to release before the end of January. So the race is on. Does Topps/Fanatics get their product out the door with hard signed autos? Because they've showcased that some of these autos, probably most of them, honestly, in the ones I've seen, most of them seem to be hard signed. So you're telling me you can re-enter the license. Obviously, Fanatics has been planning for this for a while, but you're able to re-enter the license, and your first product out of the block is a Chromium product the same month, and you're presumably able to get it released. If they are able to, before the end of this month, it's going to be really one-sided in terms of if somebody collects all wrestling cards, it's going to be pretty one-sided where a lot of that money is going to go. A lot of that money is going to go into Topps Chrome. Even Allure is going to struggle a little bit because on top of everything else, delays, a lot of lack of hype at the moment, you're going to have the fact that it's been delayed as well on top of everything else. So at the end of the year and going into 2025, that is going to be the big challenge. Upper Deck is very much behind the eight ball on this one. It would be nice to get this product out the door. One thing I didn't get a chance to talk about too much was the addition on EPAC of 2023 flagship. And, kind of I rolled my eyes when that was officially, stated that it was finally going to come out, because that is well over a year old. The good news is it means that a lot of cards that weren't coming out of the physical boxes, or so it would seem, finally started appearing on the marketplace. And magically, the photo variations and some other parallels and things that I was looking for suddenly became available. I'm starting to see them on eBay, which is good. It is a good thing. But at the same time, I'm sitting there going, this is a product. Last year, in September, I believe it was, we had 2024 flagship. You couldn't even get 23 into EPAC less than a year after the physical release. And you even had another flagship product physically released before the EPAC was ready to go. Well, then how long is it going to take for some of these other products to come in? The question then is, how long is it going to take for some of these subsequent ones to also get an EPAC release? It's just not a good look. I think that's really the big takeaway that I want to state here is it's not a good look. It's a real struggle, and it dampens any enthusiasm the fan base might have for it. Again, flagship is never going to be the most popular one because it has certain inherent weaknesses built into it. And it's one of those things where there's nothing you can do about it. Flagship is flagship. Black Diamond trying to do a high-end product. Well, right now, the product itself and a lot of the characters in it are not at their hottest. So you're going to struggle with that too. And it did. It's not that nothing's getting opened. It's that a lot of the stuff is still sitting in boxes waiting to be opened. And that's going to make it tough in the singles market. And at the same time, the singles aren't necessarily caught up. They've already fallen below kind of the threshold line. If you're curious and you want to see, go check out what some of the MJF autographs are going for. Do they still hold a premium over a lot of the other characters? Sure, but the gap has narrowed quite a bit. Unless it's a very special card and really popular card, a lot of it is the answer to a lot of the questions is, yeah, the cards look all right, but it's hard to be super enthusiastic when a lot of the cards are like, yeah, it's okay. Could have been nicer, could have been a little bit designed a little differently, could have been a little bit better. And a lot of the booklets are redemptions, which is fine. They're being redeemed and they're being sent out there in reasonable time, at least as far as I can see. But then go take a look at them. They look all right, but you're seeing a lot of black t-shirt swatches. So it's one of those things where, again, this is the premium product. If you're still anywhere close to paying over 200 US or close to 300 US, which is what it initially started at, well, I've seen discounts on that already. Quite a number of discounts. So it's one of those things where the greater the discount, the more it's telling that just the secondary market is not holding it up. Well, at the same time, the price on those cards have steadily been decreasing right away. Even from the initial release, it started going down right away. And now you can get a lot of really nice cards, still for a relatively inexpensive price. But even some of the decent hits and some of the tougher pulls are not even holding up to the price of a box. So it's one of those things where if you pull a couple of manufactured patches and you have, maybe not the greatest base card and some of the other ones don't hold up the value, then all of a sudden you're stuck with a box where you've immediately lost half to 2/3 of the value, even by the moment you finished opening the pack. Bottom line, the next couple of weeks are going to be a very busy time because now we're going to be rolling into January here, and presumably, in theory, cross our fingers, we should get 2 wrestling card releases. And they're going to be close enough together that we're going to see what impact, if any, they have on each other. The Topps Chrome one, I think, is going to be the more significant release in terms of seeing how the market reacts to potentially the rock cards in there, and then their Legends checklist, and a lot of the stuff they've got potentially available there. Fanatics has a strong relationship with WWE, so they can get their hands on a lot of these autographs, and the more of these autographs they can get their hands on, well, the box has 2 autographs in a box. Fanatics looks like it's going to be doing some of those selling directly, direct to consumer, which I'll be interested to see what the secondary market does on the car box prices themselves. That's going to be very interesting. And it's also going to be interesting to see how some of these cards do, like a Stone Cold Steve Austin autograph, an Undertaker autograph, a Roman Reigns, John Cena. They've got enough names to kind of carry that section of it. And then I'd also like to see what happens with some of the mid-tier and lesser names, because that'll also be telling in terms of where the box price goes relative to the value or perceived value. Nonetheless, I think it was very wise for Topps to come out of the gate, not with a paper product, but with a chromium product. So that kind of plays into also that comparison that I gave a little bit earlier about one of the struggles was Upper Deck only released 2 products, and one of them was a paper product, which already has an inherent weakness, and then a super high-end product for an IP that isn't at its strongest. It may not have been the 1-2 punch that you wanted because you missed out on the chromium one, and now we're crossing our fingers hoping we're going to get the chromium one that we probably should have gotten last year. So anyway, hopefully, all that rambling, I didn't lose you. There was a lot there. I was trying to kind of get a lot of different thoughts coalesced together. My point here, if I want to summarize it, to try to encapsulate this all, is that there's going to be a lot of activity right now. January of 2025 is going to be a big thing in terms of these releases. It's going to be a big thing in terms of where the perception a lot of this is going to be. If Topps Fanatic is able to follow up what was a very successful run for Panini with this license. Panini has had a lot of detractors, deservedly so, because they've done a lot of things wrong, but they did a pretty good job with the WWE license. I'm not as super high on it as, Adam Gelman in the previous example was there. Again, he was there with pom-poms, but if Topps is able to do a couple of decent things, he'll be there with pom-poms for that one too. So, he's gung-ho with whatever they're going to release. The point is, they've got big shoes to fill because Panini did do a good job with it. And I think that's one of the things where Upper Deck was kind of left on the short end of the stick there. And that kind of played out into a lot of the criticisms and also a lot of those ratings. It's hard to find too many people that thought the Upper Deck AEW year was like super crazy or super good. There were still good things in it, but it's one of those things where it wasn't the best year. If I was going to give them a grade for this past year, I might give them something more like along the lines. I'm not going to be all the way at an F. I'm not going to be quite that bad, but I'll give them something like a C-, a D+. It wasn't a particularly strong year. It's one of those things where some of those weaknesses became very evident. And like I said, one of the big things is going to be getting that release schedule in order. Unfortunately, that's something we've been saying for the last couple of years. And it's something we've been saying for the last couple of years for Upper Deck in general. Again, I could just as easily have made this on my regular sports card channel and talked about hockey and said the exact same thing. And that, I think, is the biggest problem. So it's going to be the biggest challenge going forward. As a collector, I'm still going to be out here. I'm still going to be collecting. If and when Allure comes out, I'm probably going to get a couple boxes. Cross my fingers. Maybe I'd like to open up a fair number of them like I did last time, because honestly, I really loved Allure last time. If they're able to improve anything over the previous version of it, I'm probably going to like it. So it's going to be one of those things where, look, I'll bring the pom-poms for this particular product because for that one, I like that particular product. I enjoyed the first version of Allure. I'm hoping the second version of it will be good. But at the same time, I'm still a collector at heart as far as that stuff is concerned. But I'm also not going to wear rose-colored glasses. If there's some weaknesses in there or some problems with it, I'm more than happy to talk about those because they're part of the deal too. It's one of those things where you can still be critical and still appreciate the product for what it is, patronize it, but also offer the critique. So you can do both. So I'm going to cross my fingers and hope for the best on that. But otherwise, as an observer, I would love to open a box of Topps Chrome if for no other reason than morbid curiosity. But I think the box price may be a little aggressive out of the gate. So I might stay away unless it's something that becomes at least plausible. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I think, though, if anyone has dreams or illusions that the Topps Chrome prices are going to be in line with what they were doing last time before Fanatics took over, I think you're in for a rude awakening. What the exact result is going to be, I don't know. But I think it's going to be a little more expensive than you might think. So we'll see how that one ends up playing out. Anyway, thank you if you made it to the end of this long video. I apologize for kind of rambling on there, but I had a lot of stuff I tried to compress into that. More videos will be coming up on the channel, probably some more box breaks down the road. Again, I've got to find the right stuff and the right timing, but I do want to open up some more stuff on the channel and talk about it. And as some of the stuff starts coming out and we get some impressions on it, check out the cards and all that, I'll happily come back and talk about it and update some of my thoughts on some of these things. So with all that said, thank you very much. Like if you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and we'll catch you in the next one.